Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order our April 6, 2023 Ascension Parish Council meeting. I will ask Coach to lead us in invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's bow our heads. Most Heavenly Father, at this hour in the evening, as we assemble ourselves here tonight, we want to thank you for allowing us to be here. We're very grateful, honored to be here tonight. I pray, Lord, a blessing upon each and every person under the sound of my voice. I pray, Lord, that you bless this parish of Ascension moving forward. I ask, Lord, that you guide this meeting, direct us, and help us to do this parish business for your people. And, Lord God, when we've gone and done what you've asked us to do, we thank you so much for being with us. And, Lord, as we leave this place tonight, I ask, Lord, that you allow each of us to get home safe and sound to our families. In your name we pray, and we all say it, amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Let's see, roll call. Madam Secretary, the full council is here. Item number 3, chair's additions. The chair has no additions tonight. Agenda item number 4, public comment sign-in period. If anybody would like to speak on any of our agenda items, please come up to the podium and fill out a card and get that to us. And whenever we get to that agenda item, we will call you up to speak. All right. 5A, presentations. Proclamation to proclaim Child Abuse Prevention Month in Ascension Parish.
Good evening, Council. So, Child Abuse Prevention Month. Child abuse and neglect is a complex and ongoing problem in our society, affecting many children in our community. And every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, nurtured, feel secure, and be free from verbal, sexual, emotional, or physical abuse and neglect. It is the responsibility of every adult who comes in contact with a child to protect that child's inalienable right to be safe and nurturing. Ascension Parish has dedicated individuals and organizations who work daily to counter the problem of child maltreatment and to help parents obtain assistance they need. Our communities are stronger when all citizens become aware of child abuse and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing environment. Every child abuse prevention program succeeds because of the partnerships among families, social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement, and business community. And all citizens, communities, agencies, faith organizations, businesses will work to increase their efforts to support families. Now, therefore, I, Clint Quintemont, President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority invested in me, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month within the Parish of Ascension, and urge all citizens to recognize this month by dedicating ourselves to the task of improving the quality of life for all children and family. At this time, Chair, I would like Stephanie Bremen to come up and say a few words for us.
Absolutely.
Good evening. So I am Stephanie Breeden with Child Advocacy Services. We are a private nonprofit that services 10 parishes in Louisiana, one of them being Ascension. We're completely separate from Baton Rouge. We serve 10 parishes around. But we have 2 different programs. One is our Children's Advocacy Center and one's our CASA program. Most people are familiar with CASA, where we have community volunteers that advocate for children in foster care. And then our Children's Advocacy Center has forensic interviews. We work very closely with law enforcement to interview kids that have gone through some kind of traumatic event so that law enforcement and child protection can continue on with their investigation and then bring it to court. So not a lot of people realize that Ascension Parish has an issue with child abuse and neglect. We saw after COVID, some of our numbers went down in the number of kids being abused, but here recently they have skyrocketed. And a lot of that has to do with domestic violence going on in the home, some of the drug abuse that's going on. A lot of that has led to overdoses by parents, drug-affected newborns, and there are a lot of children that are in care right now. Last year alone, through our CASA program, we served 103 kids, and we did 158 forensic interviews. That's a lot for Ascension Parish in a year. And we are working this month to just promote awareness about this being an issue. We want the whole community to come together and take a stand against it. So everybody has a pinwheel that my daughter Becca gave everyone. This month we want to spend change for children by displaying the pinwheels everywhere and making sure that folks know that in Ascension Parish we take a stand against child abuse. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chair, this is the only speaker we have on any of the proclamations. Would the council like to take a photo?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Absolutely. Please bring your daughter up with you if you'd like. If she wants to get in the spin wheel. Try to, yeah, try to squeeze in a little bit.
Oh, that's okay.
I was gonna stand behind Chase so he could see him.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This chair is so low. How are you?
It's feel like you're sitting on the floor.
All right, thank you for that. Agenda item 5B, proclamation to proclaim Fair Housing Month in Ascension Parish.
Again, Chair, 51st anniversary of the National Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 during the month of April, is an occasion for all Americans, individuals, and collectively to right themselves to the principles of freedom and housing discrimination whenever it exists. The National Fair Housing Law guarantees all citizens the right to freely choose a home and prohibits discrimination concerning the sale, rental, finance, housing based on race, religion, national origin, or sex. The Fair Housing Law has been passed by the state of Louisiana in implementation of the law that requires positive commitment and involvement and support of each of our citizens. The department and agencies of the state of Louisiana are to provide leadership in the effort to make fair housing not just an idea, but an ideal for all our citizens. Barriers that diminish the rights and limit the options of any citizen to freely choose a home will ultimately diminish the rights and limit the options of all. Therefore, I, Clint Quintmall, President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority invested in me, do hereby proclaim March 26, 2023 to April 1st, 2023 as the Flood Awareness Week, Fair Housing Month. Somebody has a typo here. Parish of Ascension encourage all citizens to learn how to minimize the effects of or hold to. Somebody has altered, didn't do this right. So it is Fair Housing Week. Proclamation. Somebody made a typo there.
All right, thank you. And we have one more proclamation to proclaim April 10th through 14th, 2023, Community Development Week in Ascension Parish.
All right. I think that's the right one. Ascension Parish has participated in the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, which funds the public infrastructure, economic development, and the housing programs to the community. Ascension Parish and communities throughout the nation, 48 years of CDBG funding to develop a strong relationship with residents, principally those to low to moderate income. Ascension Parish recognizes that the CDBG program is a partnership of federal, state, local, and community and business efforts, and that serves the CDBG program rely heavily on the dedication and goodwill of our combined efforts. Ascension Parish gives special thanks and recognition to all the participants whose hard work and devotion in the neighborhoods and the low to moderate income residents to help ensure the quality and effectiveness of the CDBG program. Therefore, Clint Quintmall, President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby declare April 10th through the 14th, 2023, as Community Development Week.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 6, while you're up there at the podium, Mr. President, your report.
All right. excited to announce that the Chamber Volunteer Ascension, the Sheriff's Department, and Ascension Parish government have teamed up to help the tornado victims in Mississippi. We have a trailer full of supplies for the victims that will be delivered on the 11th and the 12th through the 16th of April, which will be providing meals to first responders in Rolling Fork. We all remember we were being overwhelmed by the waters that rose in 2016. We also remember being overwhelmed when thousands of volunteers came as far as Utah to help us put our lives back together. Our trip is about paying it forward. Also, it would not be possible without industry partners, CF Industries, Shell Geismar, BASF, OxyChem, and Rubicon. Last but not least, I would like to congratulate Kate MacArthur for being named one of Baton Rouge Business Report's most influential women in business. Kate has done a great job in leading AEDC, and in 2022 alone, she has helped attract more than $18 billion of investment and $90 million in permanent payroll. Under her leadership, AEDC has continued efforts to market 17,000-acre Riverplex Mega Park in Donaldsonville. There have been 2 major feasibility announcements which bring that potential to $12 billion in investment and 450-plus jobs to the area. So we're proud of what Kate has accomplished and look forward to 2023 to be just as successful as 2022. That concludes my report, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Coach.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity. As I said earlier, I would like to, as a alum of the Louisiana State University women basketball program, on last week, on behalf of Ascension Parish and Ascension Parish Councilman, we'd like to congratulate the women basketball team of LSU and go Tigers.
Yes, sir. There you go.
Also like to recognize and thank the Congressional District for their efforts of $10 million, Mr. President, $10 million for the gas pipes here in Donaldsonville that we have been working on for quite some time. It's been a long time coming, and we want to thank them, appreciate them for doing the job, bringing the bacon home, so to speak. Thank them very much for the Congressional District, Mr. Troy Carter and Mr. Senator Cassidy. We'd like to thank those guys. Also, April 15th, the Recreation Department West Ascension program will be having an honor program at the Lemon Center, honoring our young kids for doing a terrific job this season. And we're asking those of you all that are not doing anything to come out and support those kids at 6 o'clock, April 15th at the Lemon Center. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chairman.
Yep. All right, thank you, Coach. Item number 7, general business, a resolution requesting the introduction and adoption of legislation to amend section 4690.13 of Title 33 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Mr. Jerome, would you mind giving us a brief overview of this?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, the legislation that we have that allows us to set up the road infrastructure districts for these new subdivisions expires next year, all right? And it was state approved. And this resolution, all this resolution does is allow or ask the legislation to take up that and renew it for us and provide some small provisions, small changes, including, some, the allowance to collect money to do drainage improvements or drainage maintenance, right, within those subdivisions. So that's all this is.
Motion to adopt resolution. All right, I have a motion by Mr. Robert,
Second.
a second by Coach. Yeah, a question from Mr. Lawler.
This is for the road impacts for each subdivision that we do, right? The 15 mils?
That's correct, yes.
So we're gonna use some of that money to for drainage, possibly.
Right now, the law does not allow us to do maintenance for drainage, collect money to do drainage. We're modifying the legislation to ask if we can do that in the future, right?
Is that gonna require an increase in the millage then?
No, the millage would stay at 15 mils.
But the millage was set at a rate that would allow us to pay for the
Right now, we're starting the program up, and on new projects, we're collecting 15 mills with the anticipation that it's going to go way down once we build up the pot and once the project's built out. So remember, when these subdivisions are typically built, let's say we've got a 100-unit subdivision, the first year you may have 25 homes. The second year you might have 50, and it's not built out until maybe year 3 or 4. So at that point, when there's a full built out, we anticipate the millage going down because we're going to have enough money in our budget to to maintain the streets. So at that point, we might be able to increase it to do drainage, right? So
I don't
that
remember-
was the thought.
The concern is, I don't remember us doing that before. The thought was that the amount that we're looking at was to, initially, we would be able to do, I think it was crack seals, and then chip seals,
Correct.
and then we would do, I forget what the next step is, and eventually, the very expensive overlay.
Do the entire street, correct? Correct.
And that was gonna cost a lot of money, and that's why it was gonna have to build up over the years, and that
Yeah.
money was pushing out. I've just got a real concern that we're gonna start taking money from this project and using it on other things. Basically, and, we've already told some of these subdivisions that we're gonna maintain the roads. And if we go and start taking it for other things, if we don't have enough money to maintain these roads, or if they don't have enough money to maintain these roads, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a problem.
Well, when we build the budget for these projects at the very beginning, when we come to you initially and have you set up the district for each of these subdivisions, we have a detailed budget on it and takes us out to 20 years. And by the year, 5, maybe 7, we see a real reduction in the millage to maybe 6 or 7 mills typically in order to maintain the fund that allows us to do the maintenance on the streets. So we still have that gap, going up to 15 mills if we want to use it, in the future. So we don't have to, but it's an option that would be available to us.
How would that increase? How would you increase the mills at that point, though?
You wouldn't, you can't, you can only go to 15.
No, that's what I'm
right?
saying, but
Yeah.
how would, so if it gets
But-
reduced to,
Well, every year, when you do your budget and you ask for the millage increases on all the different programs, this is part of it, okay? So if you notice in the line items for all the things that you do and ask for budget line items, this is part of that budget increase.
so if the mills are eventually reduced down to 6 mills, and then a couple years later, we want to reduce it to 15, we can do that without going to the subdivision? We can just unilaterally increase their mills?
Yep. Yes, you can. The way the current legislation is written, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some concerns about that, because it was done the first time with the express intent that this was going to maintain all of our roads, and now it looks like we're taking money away from that, and we may spend this money where we didn't intend it to.
Mr. Lawley, would you let me take a shot at it?
Sure.
I think this would be a very similar situation to the subsurface drainage in Pelican Point, where you have issues and then it turns into road issues. This is one of Councilman Robert's main issues in Pelican Point. And so being that, and listen, I'm let the attorney address the particular language, but in that situation, just fix the road, fix the drainage with the funds, and therefore you're fixing the subsurface drainage and the road itself. Obviously, we're well-funded in drainage compared to roads, so we would never take this to go spend it on drainage. It would always spend on the road because we're always behind, even with the 15 mills. It does not equate to us being able to maintain the roads in any particular subdivision other than trying just to keep up, which is what we do. So I would believe that it would work in cohort with subsurface drainage under the road, and therefore maybe it complies to both. That would be my best shot at it.
No, I mean, I see what you're saying. You also, but you had mentioned that this money, the 15 mills, doesn't even keep up with. And that's my only concern, is that we sold this as, hey, we're gonna maintain these roads with this money, and now we're looking to do something else with it. I just have a concern with that. Unfortunately, we can't see into the future and know what it entails. But I can tell you, in the future, if we get to a point where all of a sudden these subdivisions don't have enough money to maintain the roads, we're gonna be looking back at this vote and saying, well, you kind of messed this up.
Yeah, I think that the money is strictly used for the road. The only where it would come in with drainage is subsurface as it relates to curb and gutter along the roads, and therefore it would adjust to both. But again, I don't know the legal wording, and I have to have the attorney come in and answer that, but that's where I could see where the language would cover both. But we would obviously spend the money on the road because that's why it was dedicated. That was the intent, and therefore we wouldn't go spend it on a pond in the back. But that's my best shot at it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just, there's nothing to stop us from spending it on a pond. There's nothing to stop it from going to drainage, and all of a sudden these subdivisions don't have the money for the roads that we told them they would. That's why maybe we should look at this a little bit more. I think we should, I like that we're gonna go to the legislature and ask them to move forward with this, but having the caveat that we're gonna be able to use it for other things, I don't think that's a wise idea right now. We could always do that later on, when we get to that point that we're lowering the millage.
I will say this much, that we are on a deadline to get on this year's legislative calendar, so that's why we're before you right now.
Mr. Cagnolati, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in light of this resolution, I'd like to offer a motion to amend Section 3 to read, "The parish council as governing authority is hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to take any and all such action as may be necessary to carry into effect the provisions of this resolution." The reason for that is I spoke to legal counsel, and it says for this, resolution, but it can be interpreted as a setting a precedent for future resolutions. So we just want to say that we're the governing authority, and we're going to be empowered to do that.
What section is that? Okay.
Section 3, the parish council as governing authority is hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to take any and all such action as may be necessary to carry into effect the provisions of this resolution.
Yeah, I'll second that.
The chairman of the authority. So it currently says the chairman of the governing authority be and he is authorized. Okay, and you just wanted to say the governing authority?
Correct. The parish council as governing authority is
Okay.
hereby authorized.
All right, so your amendment is to replace the chairman with the parish council as the governing authority?
Correct.
Okay,
And then he and be omitted, and then starts with is hereby.
okay. All right,
It could affect future, if they say they set a precedent, then councils and chairmans, in future years could look back and say that it set a precedent, so they could do that.
okay. All right, so I have an amended motion by Mr. Cagnolati, and Mr. Lawler, you seconded it?
I seconded it.
Okay, and Ms. Casso, and then I think Mr. Lambert. Ms. Casso, you had questions, comments?
So I just had a question. If we could, how specific is the language in our effort to have this modified? Can we have language specific to the fact that this must be, if it's used for drainage, it must also be related to the road? Cannot just be a drainage somewhere off in the subdivision that's not related to the function of the street.
Well, the current language in the law allows us to maintain drainage features that are ancillary to the road, right? So if there's like a curb inlet on the road itself, we can certainly use the money currently, for that. But if we want to go in, as Parish President said, about ponds, things of this sort, ditches that are unrelated to the road, we currently cannot do that with the current legislation. Right? So this,
And I'm not sure I
And-
don't
and it's
agree
rather-
that we
it's rather
shouldn't
general.
be able to do that.
and whenever we have a district that comes before you, there's a report in that legislation, and it's very specific as to what the money can be used. And if there's a situation in a particular subdivision where we don't want to do drainage, we will put that in the report. Okay, so we can be rather specific in the subdivision legislation that comes before you, the ordinance that comes before you to set up the district. All this does is allow us, the state's giving us the authority to set up these districts. And that's what this resolution refers to. Okay?
I share some of Mr. Lawler's concerns, but I also think I understand what the president was saying, that we're not intending here to go off and do drainage projects in this subdivision with road infrastructure district money. Can you
Yeah,
clarify, Mr. President?
So, talking to John, probably incorrect in my statement. This is to say that shadows of man shack, issue with the pond under drainage, then you could use those to do shadows of man shack, do the pond instead of doing an allocation out of drainage. So yes, it is to be spent or have the option to spend it outside the road. That is what the language is being added for. So it would be that particular circumstance.
So I'm taking it then that when the opportunity presented itself for that millage to drop from, say, 15 to 6, we would choose to leave it at 15 and be able to benefit drainage as well.
If their pond structures failed, their
Right.
bulkheads failed, the design was flawed, but this is only for new subdivisions, so, yeah, is that correct? New subdivisions only, so this
Yeah.
is new subdivisions moving forward, not going retroactive.
Okay, yeah, I'm not as unhappy with that as long as we don't reduce the millage and then run it back up. If we leave it at 15, and we know we might have some drainage issue in that subdivision, then I think that's fair to the people who are paying a millage, and that the legislature has authorized us to do that. But I wouldn't want to drop it and then raise it, drop it and then raise it.
Mr. Lambert?
Thank you, Chair. Let's face it, most of the failures are due to water on the roads, and
Exactly.
that's where your failures are coming in. We have drainage and transportation next week. What is your time schedule on this? Could you wait a couple of weeks, or do we have to get this turned in now?
It'd be preferable if we got it turned in now. Yeah. We have to advertise.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And look, there's so many cases out there that, hey, water is the failure of what's going on. So,
It's the root of the problem.
well,
Mr. Ogeron?
Do you have a copy of the proposed legislation? I don't see, I have it in my packet.
Yeah, we have a copy. I can certainly get it to you.
Is there any reason
Was
why
it
we
in-
didn't get a copy of it to review it?
No, there was no particular reason. It was just, we
I
didn't
think
think
it
that
would be
we didn't think
important-
that it was necessary at this point.
You know, it would be important for us to at least be able to look at the language and see if we can decipher what the extent of this expansion to drainage actually means.
Okay.
You know, it would be important for us to have that opportunity. And I'm just kind of questioning it, again, this is 25th, 30th time that the last second we come to us with, we need to vote on it today or we're going to miss out on an opportunity. And it seems to be, a continuing story with our administration, that it happens every time.
No, that was not. And I
And listen,
take-
Jerome, I
listen,
know you better than that. I
now
know
look,
that's not the case. But
Councilman Ogeron, I take full responsibility. I didn't know the law in terms of how to get items on the state legislation agenda, and that was my error because we didn't advertise it in time. So that's why we're coming to you now. All right.
Because,
And
it's
I'd be
kind of hard
happy
to
to
ask
get
us
you a
to vote
copy
on
of the
something that we don't have a
legislation.
chance to read.
I have a copy of the legislation in my file. I'd be happy to get it to you and give it to everybody.
And the other question I have is if we're going to open and expand these dollars that are being collected by Ascension Parish and expand that into spending on drainage, is that some sort of a conflict that we're going to have between Ascension Parish government and the Drainage Board?
Okay.
Because I think there's a conflict there that, the parish is spends money on parish activities, not on drainage activities, and vice versa. And so, so there could be an issue there as well. And I think Councilman Lambert's suggestion was correct. We've got drainage and transportation next week, and then we have another council meeting thereafter. I really think we need to table this so we have the opportunity to review the documents and make sure that it's not expanding beyond what our governmental authorities are.
Okay. If I can make a suggestion, possibly, we can take action on the resolution. I will distribute the document to you, the legislation, and we can, because the legislation's, I don't think is going to be attached to the resolution, right? So we're having our consultant, Mr. Braxton, working with us on getting that to the state. So we can present that to you and have it a discussion item at the drainage meeting.
Sure.
And then at the drainage meeting, if you want to make changes to it, you want to eliminate drainage as a possibility of funding, we can discuss it at that time. But I'd prefer not delaying the resolution, right? Because we
Well,
really
okay,
need to do a
and
public
I'm
hearing.
good with you on that.
Okay.
What language would we need to change in the resolution to identify that the legislation cannot be submitted to the state without concurrence with both the Transportation Committee and the Drainage Board?
Well,
We got legal counsel here. Can anybody help me with trying to make that determination as to what we need to put in this resolution to ensure that the legislation doesn't go forward without the council's final approval of what the legislation says? You're looking at me strange, Kenneth. Need me to repeat myself?
Yeah, trying to figure out if this is that.
Okay, I'm sorry. By the way, LSU's down 2-0, so I know that, that was concerning you as well. We haven't had a chance to see the legislation, and Jerome made a good suggestion. He said, why don't we pass a resolution tonight that we're gonna submit the legislation to the state legislature? But in the meanwhile, give the council a final approval of what that language is gonna say. Do we need to change anything in this resolution to give us that to give us that as an option?
It's a resolution, so it really doesn't have voting effect to it. Council do that.
So we could,
If I might,
maybe
Councilman Orgeron.
section 4 might be what we need to do then, where section 4 says, resolution shall immediately take effect upon adoption.
So Corey, would it be okay if we gave you a gentleman's agreement that we would contact the author if you guys don't?
There
approve
are
it,
no
we just
gentlemen in
pull it?
politics, John,
Yeah,
you know
sure
that.
there is, sure there is. It'd be the easiest way to do it. Ken Brass introduced the bill, he's not gonna do anything you guys don't want. So if it turns out you read the legislation and you decide you don't like it, we could pull it, but I can tell you, at some point, every subdivision's drainage feature will fail, and 90% of HOAs do not have the money to cover it. And so when that drainage feature in Plantation Creek fails, and you can ride by, it's in the process of failing,
That Ascension Parish is responsible for drainage and not East Ascension or West Ascension drainage. Now we are conflicting between two government entities. And I think there's an issue with that. You know, there's been a problem with the two being intertwined so closely as it is.
So just as we pay a transportation tax, these subdivisions have millages to take care of their roads only. And so this would be no different to say, if your drainage structure fails in your subdivision, you have a funding source within this subdivision that is dedicated to your subdivision. If you need additional funds, you go to East Ascension Drainage or West Ascension Drainage, and you apply for the additional funding to do the project if it falls short. But at least you have a funding source. And of course, these start when the subdivision is built. The developer is the only owner. He approves it. And then that taxing district is set up. Everybody in the new subdivision pays the millage. It's set aside for that subdivision. It can't be spent outside that subdivision. So it is for the residents within that subdivision. If the HOA goes defunct, that money is there, and then which happens all the time. And instead of y'all getting calls from defunct HOA and residents in those subdivisions saying, hey, our structure's failing or our pond is falling in, you will have access to a pot of money that's dedicated for the drainage and the roads in that new subdivision. So it is just a funding source, just like we fund for roads. It's the ability to tackle drainage projects in that subdivision as well, as an addition to. So,
And look, I understand that, you know, funding source is another word for let's increase taxes. And I understand that that's what we're trying to do, is increase the taxes on these citizens.
no, it's already current. Like, you
But-
don't have to move into the subdivision. You're not required, but to know that there's a funding mechanism to keep up with your roads and your drainage in the subdivision is, you don't have to move in. You know that that's applied when you buy the house. And you say, okay, at this subdivision, we know that at least we have a funding source to keep our roads up in our subdivision. And we don't have to be like the older subdivision and come to the council and beg
So
for money and
did-
get on a long list and do all that for maintenance.
Did Mr. Quintmore just say that if you don't like our tax structure, don't move to Ascension Parish? Did you really just
No,
say that?
listen, we're not gonna make a
All right,
circus
all right,
here.
we're
This
staying
is,
on point about the resolution. Mr. Robert.
Yeah, I want to reiterate how important this is. Whenever I was going through my campaign, I looked into a lot of this. In the business world, it's used very commonly in commercial, residential, all of it. All we're doing is giving ourselves access to these funds and giving these people more access to the funds in the future. We're not saying we're doing it right now, we're not saying any of that, but when it comes to it, it gives us that ability, it gives us that vehicle. It's just a resolution. I think we pass it and keep a close eye on it once it's going through, make sure the language is fine, and it's a win-win over here. I wish we would have had these set up for everything a long time ago, because the money within that community goes to repair and fix that community. And hopefully we can expand and do this into more and involve more of these districts throughout the parish. Thank you.
Mr. Lawler.
No, and I agree, a lot of what, I agree with the idea of the general idea of it. What I'm concerned is when we originally did these, we looked at the 15 mils and said we need the 15 mils for roads, and it was calculated out and it was going to cover roads. And now we're hearing something different, that we're charging 15 mils, but down the road it may not cost as much. The concern is when we originally did this, each subdivision, we're supposed to look at it and say, this is what's gonna cost to do your roads over this time period, and this is what the millage has to be, and we set that millage consistent with what that subdivision was gonna need. And now I'm hearing that, hey, that may not be exact, but we haven't seen any numbers on that. We don't have anything to show that's correct. So a real possibility is that we could get to a point where we don't have enough money for our roads in those subdivisions, which is the reason we passed this. And that's the only hesitation I have, is that we sold a bill of goods that this was gonna be for roads, to maintain your roads, and now we're saying that, well, maybe we're gonna have money left over. So and there's another part to that I've been thinking about. We have talked for a long time about the ponds in our neighborhoods and how they're failing, they're not good. We haven't taken any action on that. Well, see, right now, you can already use the money for the infrastructure of the roads, for the drainage portion, and now we're gonna expand it. I understand that, but the money was there to maintain these roads, and there's a set standard of what we're gonna be doing year after year to maintain them with that 15 mils. And if we get to a point where we're taking some of that money out, we're not gonna be able to maintain the roads, we're not gonna be able to maintain the drainage, we're not gonna have money for either of them. And that's gonna be a problem. So my point is, what I'd like to see is two things. We need to look at how we handle our drainage ponds. We've talked about it multiple times before. Our drainage ponds are failing. We've all seen them in all of our areas that the sides slough in. And that's a drainage problem that this money could potentially be used for. Before we start saying that, it's gonna encourage a developer just to say, hey, you know what? Build the ponds as is, because we know they got money to take care of them. We need to first make sure that our construction standards and our quality standards are high enough that we're not gonna have that kind of issue later on with the ponds. That these ponds are gonna be built to a standard that we're not gonna have to use this money for that. So that should be the first step. The second step is what I'd like to see is that we get the numbers on this, that we get the administration to provide us the numbers on what the actual numbers are for maintaining our roads with what we thought it was gonna be, and show us how that money can be spent over this 20-year period. And that will convince us, hey, we are gonna have leftover money. If we can do that, I'll be fine with it. So the resolution is good, because what I understand is we still need this resolution to continue even the roads infrastructure portion of it. We need that. What we're adding to it is this drainage portion. So I'd like to see us take out the drainage portion of this, of the part that we don't have in here. We don't have the actual body, so I don't know exactly what language to take out. Pass the resolution, but whatever bill that we're trying to introduce does not have the language in it for the drainage. It stays roads, And this is a legislative process. This can be changed later on. We can go and get them to amend this later on down the road to add the drainage portion once we get the information we need. Right now, we don't have that information. We don't even know what we're actually voting on right now. So I'm gonna make a motion that we eliminate whatever language it is in that bill. We don't know what it is. We don't have it. I can't make specific language on it that has anything to do with expanding the spending of the money to drainage projects, so that we leave it just to, is what we have now, and we pass the resolution, and then the administration comes back to us and says, hey, this is what the money's gonna look like in 20 years, and have it spelled out to us, so we can then make the decision if we wanna go back then and add the drainage portion to it. And we can always do that down the road. Legislative process, things get, amended on the floor all the time. So we're not losing anything by this, but we're still gonna get the bill moving forward. We're just not gonna pass something that we have no idea what we're voting for right now. So that's the motion I'm making. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say something real quick. So we're asking the state to give us the authority to better use the millages from the RIDD as we best see fit. This is a line item ordinance that this body has to pass every year. If the governing authority does not see fit that we should ever spend any of these 15 mills on drainage, then that would be the case.
Yes.
So I just wanted to point that out. We're only asking the state to give us the leadway to make this change somewhere down the future if this body so chooses. So I did just want to point that out. All right, so with that being said, Mr. Wagasback, you had a question. I didn't want to skip you, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. President.
Jerome, as we spoke earlier today, this is mainly to take the sunset clause out of it, so we don't have to do this every year, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So if we
The
pass this, we
legislation
would
was
still have
passed-
to review any drainage work that we do pass that.
Yes. The legislation was passed about 10 years ago. It sunsets in August of next year. And we wanted to do it this year instead of waiting till the very last minute next year rather.
So we could do this resolution, ask them to take the sunset, and we could discuss the drainage parts of it.
Yeah,
And we would
could
even
do
have to
that.
vote on that to spend those funds
We could
anyway.
do that. We can pull the
That's what my
drainage out
motion was,
now
to remove the drainage
and then come back next year and do it. As long as we get this renewed, we don't want to have the ability of not setting these up, at least for roads right now. So that's
Okay.
key.
And that's
Thank-
basically what my
thank you.
motion was,
Okay.
to remove the drainage portion and just to go forward with the removal of the sunset, and then we can consider it once we have all the information.
I'll second that motion. And does it also include the other motion on section 3?
Yes, in section 3, and to ask the administration to come to us with the numbers,
Absolutely.
within, it doesn't have to be next week. It can
Whenever.
be when they can do it reasonably.
Let me see here. Just housekeeping wise, Mr. Catalati, would you withdraw your amendment and let Mr. Lawler add that to his? Or would y'all like to vote on them separately? Is that good with you, Senator? Okay. Okay, and all right, so we have an amendment by Mr. Lawler, seconded by Ms. Casso, to eliminate any language referring to drainage in the resolution, and also to change the language in section 3 to eliminate chairman and as by he with the governing authority of Ascension Parish. Is that correct? Parish Council. Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, and we have an objection from Mr. Robert. Can we do roll call, please, Ms. Secretary?
Councilman Robert. Councilman Turner. Councilman Orgeron.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
No.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes?
Councilman Wagasback.
No.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
No.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Chairman Walsall.
No. I have that 6-5, is that right, Ms.
Yes.
McKee?
Yes.
6-5 in favor, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the amendments passed. Now we will vote on the actual resolution as amended. Do I hear any objection to the resolution as amended? All right, hearing none, so moved. Look, I will remind everyone, I know we're kind of spoiled to the new microphones. If everybody would please remember to turn on your mic whenever you're speaking and try to get a little close to it. I got kindly in the back asking everybody to speak up a little bit. Thank you.
These don't work like the ones in.
The ones in Gonzales you can hear from the conference room. Okay, introduction of ordinances, just a reminder, I only need a motion to introduce, no second. Agenda item 8A, introduction of ordinance to declare as surplus and authorize the transfer, the quitclaim deed to Jamison Door and Heather Door, a portion of the property known as West Million Road in Dawsonville, Louisiana.
Motion to introduce.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawler. Item 8B, introduction of ordinance to amend an ordinance to repeal descriptions and designations of existing parish council districts, establish new parish council districts, define the territory of each new district, describe the boundaries of each new district, designate each new district, and to address other matters relative thereto.
Motion introduced.
We have a motion introduced by Mr. Mason. Item 8C, introduction of an ordinance to amend Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 8, Emergency Management, Section 8-11, Underground Pipeline Damage Prevention.
Motion to introduce.
I have a motion by Ms. Casso to introduce. Item 8D, introduction of ordinance to amend Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 19, Roads and Bridges and Other Public Ways, Article 3, Pipeline Construction.
Motion to introduce.
Motion introduced by Ms. Casso. All right. Public hearing ordinances. Agenda item 9A, reading of ordinance to increase level 2 dollar amount threshold from the settlement of liability and automotive claims from $10,000 to $25,000. Mr. Kenneth.
Purpose, to amend an ordinance adopted by Ascension Parish Council via resolution on May 15, 2003, Chapter 2, Article 4, Section 2-52 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, which delegates authority and establishes dollar amount thresholds for the settlement of payments of various general liability and automobile claims. Whereas the Parish of Ascension, through the Ascension Parish Council under lawful session, in order to settle claims quickly and efficiently, passed an ordinance adopting a process to allow settlements of small type claims through the parish administration without the need to obtain council approval. And whereas the original ordinance designated authority and established dollar amount thresholds at the various levels, and whereas Chapter 2, Article 4, Section 2-52 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances has never been amended since adoption, May 15, 2003, and revision is required, and whereas the Human Resources Director has prepared the revision, and whereas the parish president has accepted and proposed the revision in the parish council for review, now therefore be it ordained that the Ascension Parish Council does hereby authorize the amendment of Section 2-52 attached as Exhibit A proposed by the Human Resources Department and submitted by the parish president to increase administration's threshold amount for settlement without parish council approval from $10,000 to $25,000. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance have been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon is as follows.
All right, need a motion to open public hearing? Mr. Robert, motion to open public hearing. I need a second.
Second.
A second by Mr. Lambert to open public hearing.
Motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Cagnolati. A
Motion to
second,
move the ordinance.
was that Mr. Robert? A second by Mr. Robert to close public hearing. We have a motion by Ms. Casso to move the ordinance. Have a second by Mr. Mason. Any objection? Hearing none. So moved. Item 9D, reading of ordinance to amend Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Attachment C, Typical Street Sections to allow placement of the required sidewalk within the public right-of-way and remove bricks from the drainage structures. Mr. Kenneth.
Ordinance, purpose to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Attachment C, Typical Street Sections. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over subdivisions, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Attachment C, Typical Street Sections, is amended as more fully described in Exhibit A, attached here to and made a part hereof. Severability, in the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance having been
Motion
submitted to a
open
vote,
public
thereon was as follows.
I have a motion to open public hearing by Mr. Robert.
Second.
Second by Ms. Casso. Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Mason,
Second.
a second by Ms. Casso. Motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Mason,
Second.
a second by Ms. Casso. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved.
Yes, right.
Item 9G, reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-506, Protection of Existing Watersheds and Conveyance Systems to clarify language regarding exemptions and to add verbiage requiring the implementation and maintenance during construction of perimeter drainage. Mr. Kenneth.
Purpose, to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-506, Protection of Existing Watersheds and Conveyance Systems. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over subdivisions, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-506, Protection of Existing Watersheds and Conveyance Systems, is amended as more fully described in Exhibit A attached here to and made a part hereof. Severability, in the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance has been
Motion
submitted
to
to a
open
vote for
public
narrows
hearing.
as follows.
Motion to open public hearing by Mr. Robert, a second by Mr. Mason.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing by Ms. Casso, a second by Mr. Mason. Motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Lambert. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item on the list is item 10A. So this was originally scheduled for executive session. I believe Mr. Shake Snyder would prefer to stay out in the meeting room. Is that's correct? Okay. All right. So we do have an employee appeal on our agenda tonight. And just a quick overview of the structure of how we will operate is that the administration, the parish president, the HR director, and the employee's supervisor will have 10 minutes to present their presentation on the termination. The employee would then have 10 minutes to Second, we have the chairman of our HR review board who has heard the case. We invited him to elaborate on the decision that the HR review board had came to. Then the employee will have 10 minutes to present their evidence, witnesses, any kind of documentation they would like. Then administration will have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then the employee will have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll open the floor to the council for questions of either party. So that is how we'll start, and I will ask administration if y'all are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. Look, and either party, I put the 10 minutes and the 5 minutes on there just so we could keep some structure, but if anybody needs extra time, just please ask.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? I know sometimes they were getting texts that we couldn't hear. Just making sure I can be heard. So tonight we'll hear the termination appeal for Mr. Arthur Shake Snyder III. You have the termination packet in front of you. Excuse me, hold it.
Look, I tell you what, Ms. Casey, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute recess.
Okay.
I just want to make sure everyone, if they
ready.
don't have it on their iPads, that we can get.
We have it there.
We can get the paper copies, and let's make sure they all had a chance to kind of review it. So look,
Sure.
we'll do a 10-minute recess, everyone. We'll come back at 7:05.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, we are now reconvened from our recess, and we will continue with item 10A, employee appeal. It will not be executive session. We will do it in the open meeting. So, Ms. Kaysen, I will let you begin.
Thank you. Pardon the delay. I wasn't quite sure whether we were going to do it or open or close. So now that you have your hard copy packet, for which the electronic packet was circulated to you via email on March 28th, so certain you're familiar with the case. Mr. Shakespeare's title was Assistant Director of Public Works, organizationally referred to as the Pumping Stations Manager. In this role, he was responsible for the day-to-day operation and maintenance of all the pumping stations of Ascension Parish government. On January 31st, Mr. Shakespeare was first on the scene at the Sorrento pumping station where he discovered an oil spill. Shortly after arrival, he physically left the Sorrento pumping station premises, which left the spill unattended. Mr. Shakespeare also failed to positively communicate the oil spill with anyone in his chain of command, to include the safety officer, for over 3 hours after he discovered the spill. Despite knowing of the oil spill and being in charge of the pumping station, Mr. Shakespeare never returned to the site of the spill the entire day. He did not assist in the cleanup of the spill at all. This is all outlined in the termination letter as well. He was terminated on February 13th, 2023 for unacceptable performance in accordance with the Personnel Policy Manual, Section 6C. The HR Review Board upheld the termination upon Mr. Shakespeare's initial appeal on March 7th. The HR Review Board Chairman is here tonight to answer questions if needed. I respectfully request the termination be upheld, and I stand by for your questions if there are any.
So I'll kind of leave this up to the body. Would y'all like to ask questions of Ms. Kaysen now, or would we like to hear from the HR Review Chairman and Mr. Shakespeare, and then we can ask our questions after we have heard the entire group? Does anybody have a specific question right now for Ms. Kaysen, or would we like to hold off until we've heard from all parties? Yeah, all right, go ahead, Coach.
What was the amount of oil that was spilled? Was it a vast majority, or was it just?
I could go ahead and get that to Mr. Savoy or Mr.
It was determined that, good evening, council, sorry. We were thinking 2 to 5 gallons possibly, based on the amount of oil that was in the engine, but at the time, we didn't really know. So now that we're looking back at it, that's
So that would be considered enough to just basically just cause an accident.
to cause an accident.
Yeah, I mean, where's the oil? You said oil was spilled, right?
Yes, sir. It was on the concrete at the station, and then it dripped down through the foundation of the station into the water.
I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead. If our HR Review Chairman would please come up and just give a brief overview, just of if there was any certain facts or questions that that our HR Review Board had and all that. So I know over the last 39 months, the HR Review Board and the council have differed numerous times on recommendations on terminations and disciplines and whatnot. So I thought it'd be beneficial to hear from the HR.
Absolutely. My name's Daniel Atkins. I'm the chairman of the HR Review Board. So my background is I have certifications in senior HR leadership and SHRM and through what's called SPHR. And so I sit on the chairman of the board. We reviewed the packet that was given to y'all ahead of time. And then afterwards, we did questioning with Mr. Schneckschneider, his supervisors, and we found that everything was followed through the investigation and he violated numerous policies, and we agreed with the termination in this case.
Tim Board, does anybody have any questions here? Mr. Wagasback?
Can you speak to some of the policies that he violated?
I don't have those policies in front of me, but they were numerous safety policies that were violated.
just from the review of the investigation
Mr.
that.
Chair, I'm going to need to object to my understanding is we have a format in place. One person speaks, next person speaks, next person speaks. If we're going to allow the prosecution here to just keep tag teaming back and forth, I think we're
Well,
doing a miscarriage of justice to Mr. Schexnayder.
Well, administration didn't use their full allotment of time. There's not a
But they
prosecution.
sat
Nobody
down
was.
and gave it up.
Hmm?
If they waive the remaining time, then they're done. So having them come back and forth like this is unfair to the employee.
Okay. Well, in that case, we will totally disregard Mr. Wagasback's question. And that. Well, no, but our colleague over here is complaining because the person who can answer it, he doesn't want speaking. Mr. Wagasback asked a question, Ms. Kaysen was coming to answer it.
He has a question of the HR board. We mentioned the policies were never mentioned by the administration.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Schexnayder.
How y'all doing? My name's Arthur Schexnayder III, and thank the council for giving me this moment. They're all right. I went there on January the 31st with a robot fuel truck. We all had to go, the attendants, the mechanic, everybody had to go meet with Mr. Bill Dawson on what had happened at Malvern Grove on December the 30th. And I'd already set up fuel to go to Sorrento with Robaya, and they were gonna go put the rest at Malvern Grove. Got there when he got set up. When I go to pump it, I walked in, make sure everything's okay. I saw it all on the ground, on the cement. Made a phone call to Mr. J. He sent back to me, I'll get back with you shortly. I took him for his word. I said, okay. So I went ahead and I turned the power to the engine off so it couldn't crank because it had started on skater the night before. I turned off the other power switch too. That way nobody could go in there and just turn it on without turning the battery. I assessed the situation. I didn't see where no oil had left the pumping station. It was on the slab. So I contained it. And I was waiting for the phone call. Went outside. Robot man was almost finished. That when the electrician drove up. That was working for Delcon. I didn't know he was coming. I was trying to get all this done so I could go to the meeting. I went out front. I looked in front of the screen. I didn't see any petroleum oil out there. I seen a little vegetation sludge that you see in all the little low-lying ditches that time of the year. See it in the swamp. We saw it all over after the hurricane. It was at every pumping station. So when the fuel man finished, I made a phone call to see Mr. Roy Badman, see if they had finished with Mr. I knew he was finished with Mr. Bill Dawson because of the time of his appointment, see if they were on their way back to Malvern Grove. He told me no. He said Jared was still in there. So I called Pete Peterson was at Malvern Grove. I called Peter. I said, look, Robert's going to come in and put the fuel. I said, does anybody that know how to set up the fuel tanks? He said, no. So.
Would you speak a little closer to the
Oh, I'm sorry.
please? Just a little bit.
Well, I'm hard to understand anyway, and I apologize for that. That's why I hate talking in public.
I understand.
So Pete told me him and another operator was there, and neither one of them knew how to set the valves up to take on fuel. So being the attendant and the ones that knew what now, I went run down there, set the valves up, and then jumped in the truck so I could be there for 9:30. Not this year, but last year and the 2 years before, we went to a Cigna consultant training in Baton Rouge for governmental hazardous waste and all. And over there, we were told if all was not in the water, you contain it, you set it up where it can't spread, and there's no rush to clean it up. After I left Marvin Bro, on the way to the governmental complex, I picked up the phone, I was driving, I called Ron. Because at that time, I knew Dave wasn't going to get back in touch with me. Ron didn't answer, so when I put the phone down, I called James LeBlanc, safety man. He would be the next one. I mean, so he didn't answer. So when I got to the glass house, I sat down, I was trying to send an email to him, put a picture, I couldn't get it to work off my phone. Mr. Bill Dawson came out, we went in the meeting. When we finished the meeting, I left out, I went to DPW, tried to send another one through. I couldn't get my pictures off my phone to that, so I sent a text message to him. And I stated what had happened. Jay, and I got all the proof, the stuff here that I took off my phone. Jay sent back, are you sure this is not from the crankcase filter on the engine that would cause this problem? Well, I took that as right off that you pushing on me again. I mean, I wasn't over the mechanic no more for the pumping station. He told me he had to take direct order from him. They'll come, and I got an email here from him that I was not to order them in no way. So I couldn't call none of them to go there and just clean up the hall. When I sent it, that's what he sent back, and someone there, Ron, they called me and asked me if this is why I was trying to get in touch with him and Dave. And I said, yeah. James LeBlanc sent back, thanks for the heads up, they're all in the water. I sent back, it looked like it was all contained to the top to me. I didn't go back out there because after that, when I sent back, the dipstick was left up on the engine by somebody. And who do we need to send? Jade, supposed to be my immediate boss. Calling around at him, he never responded to me. The phone call he was going to send back, I haven't got to this day. I went in the office to do paperwork, trying to get information for y'all that they were asking me to get together. And after it was cleaned up, Mr. Ryan Landry came in the office and started telling all about what happened out there. He said there was no oil they could pick up with the all absorbing pad or the containment fluid. He said he personally checked the engine, and the engine was directly on the fuel line. He also said then they cranked up the engine and pumped it out to Conway Canal.
I missed who did you say?
Ryan Landry. During the appeal, excuse me, I'm getting a little nervous now. The one that was over the board, he asked Jay what they do with the oil pass. And I remember him saying, Jay saying, he said they put them in metal containment and sent them off to get incinerated. Ryan Landry also told me that day there wasn't no oil on them. He told them go throw them in the dumpster in the back. And I've had numerous people call me and tell me that's what happened to them. I didn't see emergency to it because from my experience, what I've seen at the pumping stations and all, there wasn't no water in all. And from what I've been told after, there still wasn't no water in all. There was was all the vegetation stuff that you see in the ditches and all. I've never seen the SPCC plan, the spill prevention, control, and countermeasures. I asked because I've had people come to me and tell me stuff that happened around that pumping station for the cameras, copy of the cameras, so I could see if all this what I was told was true. And I was denied it at first. Yesterday they sent it at 3:16. I had stuff to do last night. I don't have a computer at my house. I couldn't open it on my phone. And at this point, it's, you know, really doesn't matter. That's, y'all got any questions? So, yes, sir?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Robear, question?
My question is, so whenever the oil spilled, you said it was contained on the concrete.
Yes, sir.
And you contained it, made sure it didn't go out. So whenever you left, I guess my question is, how much oil was on the concrete contained when you left?
I would say, I got pictures of it,
Yeah.
before and after, if y'all want to see them. It shows you, the first picture that
No, if you could pass them down, Joel, we could all take a peek at it. Mr. Arthur, I'm at to actually come back so we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's hard to hear even when we're talking in the mics.
I'm hard to understand. That gets me in a lot of trouble with people. People think I'm fussing when it's my normal voice and the way I just talk, the way I grew up. Like I say, I also had the pictures screenshot every
Anything
phone
that-
call.
If you have anything that you want us to see, just hand it to us. We'd like to see it.
You are.
No, you can start from the.
Just teasing.
I'd like to have a point of clarity according to the procedure that nothing that wasn't presented at the HR review board should be presented at this time.
You're going to want that to be presented.
And these weren't presented, but my point was, just in case anybody was going to make it an issue that he didn't present those, quite possible, even though I haven't seen them, they're consistent with the ones that are in your packet. And so I was going to say that they were fine.
I object to that procedure, to not allow somebody to present evidence when they weren't even given the opportunity to review evidence that they'd asked for.
It's not mine, sir. It's the council's. That's all I was saying.
I understand that.
I
Those
want-
are
I-
after these are before.
But
Mr.
I-
Malonzo, I need clarification on what was just stated.
Let me see.
Who determines how these appeals get decided? I mean, my thought is, this council would make that determination. I don't see how the HR department can tell us how to run our appeals.
No, the chairman does. That's what I put
That's why we're
together,
looking at the pictures.
a procedure. We have no procedure.
We have no procedure.
We have no procedure at all,
with
so
no
I put
procedure,
something
we
together.
have to give the employee the benefit of the doubt.
No, I'm fine with Mr. Arthur letting us,
I didn't even know.
Let us
I
look at his
couldn't present
pictures.
The evidence till I read that today when it was sent to me, because it wasn't told to me
No,
in
we
the
good. I mean,
appeal.
it's pictures. They're just pictures of.
no. Look, for 27 years, we've been doing this, and like, just as a council, we need to adopt an ordinance or something on how we conduct these. And, every chairperson does it a little different. And after 27 years, mine's getting ridiculed this week. You know, the last 3 chairmen all had their own procedures.
I wouldn't
So-
want none of y'all job.
Yeah.
Especially
You know, no,
Yeah.
you know,
All right, does anybody have, Mr. Arthur, are you,
I'm pretty much, yeah, I don't really have nothing else to say about the oil spill.
does anybody have Mr. Ogeron?
Mr. Arthur, I'm sorry this has happened to you. You attempted to reach your supervisors that morning, didn't you?
I sure did.
They just ignored your
Well,
calls.
the first one sent back, I'll get with you shortly. In hindsight, yes, should I sent back more? Should I left a message to somebody? In my normal day life, I really don't do none of that. So I didn't see it as an emergency. It was all no different than you just spill it in a shop. It's not in the water.
My appreciation is, I think we were told that it was about approximately 2 gallons of oil possibly that had spilled.
The whole engine holds, I don't know, I think it's about 5.5, 6 gallons. And if it's still on the full mark, if it was a quart, that means the mechanic that put in his report 2 days before said he put all in it and another one, about a quart. That means he overfilled it by that quart. That's the way I take it. If it was still on the full line, they didn't have to add no oil to it.
The elephant in the room here, in my opinion, is the incident that took place at Marvinboro Pumping Station back in December.
Yes, sir.
And my appreciation is you've been pretty outspoken as far as what happened then and who made those errors and who was responsible for the errors that caused that situation to take place. You've spoken with me, and you've told me, that you thought that Mr. Robin and Mr. Savoy, your 2 immediate supervisors, failed to take action in a timely fashion. Is that the same information you provided to Mr. Dawson when he questioned you?
I tried not to say too much because what I think happened and what other ones think happened are completely different. I feel like for numerous times that I had to worry about my job. And I tried to kind of stay quiet about it, and then he started questioning me on, did this cause it? Did too many pumps cause it? And I kind of answered his questions, told him my background, grew up on a sugarcane farm right on the other side of the Sunshine Bridge, St. James, right south of the bridge on this side. Spent all my life pretty much in Donaldsonville, even though I grew up in St. James. And went to school for a diesel mechanic after. I'd done that for numerous years and went back to school for millwright to work in the plant. I didn't like the plant, I went by a dump truck. And I think a lot of y'all know, before I went to the parish as the mechanic there, during the flood, I hauled debris off for them with my dump trucks. Done that for 18 years. The weather, insurance, highway, I got tired of it. When this job came up and I was offered it, I took it, trying to make myself a retirement. And that's why I came, And I think I worked hard for the parish, pulling wrenches and being over it.
So between the Marvinboro incident and this 2-gallon oil spill incident, you were concerned of retaliation?
I
if you said
pretty
anything.
much had been stripped of being able to give any orders. I had supervisors and all would call me when they decided they wanted to pump water. When it would be sent to them, didn't They called me, hey, we heading out there. I said, I don't know nothing about it. The mechanic was told to go out there and give the orders.
So you feel that prior to this termination, you were being isolated by your supervisors?
Yes, sir.
And still, you tried to protect as many people as you could when you spoke with Mr. Dawson?
Yes, sir.
I got no
I
questions.
bet-
I may have some follow-up questions, but I don't have no more questions at this point.
Yeah, Mr. Lawler?
Yeah, I have several questions. I may jump around a little bit. First of all, I read the report. I read all the documents pertaining to your firing. It says that you didn't call James LeBlanc. In there, it specifically states that you never tried to call him, and that was one of the bases.
I think it's in that packet that it
That
shows.
you did
Actually, I
not.
got two of it.
What time did
I
you
wanted
call?
to get that screenshot of it because I shot it the next day. It didn't actually have the date on it.
You said you called him at 9:12,
Yes, sir.
but others saying that you didn't call him
Yeah.
until a text at 11. But I think you provided that to us, correct? Okay, so we have documentation that you actually did try and call him. You tried to call your safety man. It was said by the administration a couple minutes ago that you did not assist in the cleanup of the spill at all. Once again, when you saw what specific steps did you take after you saw the oil on the ground?
I went and I turned the Murphy switch stuff, that'll shut the engine down if it runs hot, all that. I turned it off right there, so Skater couldn't start it.
And why was that important?
That way, if it started back up, it would spill more out. I didn't touch the dipstick because I didn't want to get blamed for doing something I shouldn't have been doing. I went to the side and there's a switch on the batteries. Before it was on Skater, we would actually turn the batteries off every time, so it wouldn't drain the battery. And I killed that, so nobody could even go in there and just turn the key and start it.
And again, so it couldn't spill more oil.
It
Somebody
couldn't
went in
spill
there
more
and
oil.
stopped it.
And I didn't see it as an emergency.
What did you do next?
I contained everything. I'd already called Jade at this time.
Let me ask you, how did you contain it? I'm not.
I took all dry.
Is that like that kitty litter stuff?
Yeah. And it's in them pictures. You can see how I put it around now. Yeah, that way it couldn't go nowhere. I mean, it was all just on the cement anyway. And
So we, Mr. Kenner just told me that, so we actually do have the video from the pump station. That's what we
y'all
can-
want to watch it? I'm fine with it. I didn't get the.
You want to finish asking your question?
Well, the problem with the video is, if any attorney will tell you that you get evidence the day of, it's useless. I asked for this video. I asked for this video weeks ago, and I was told I was not allowed to have it because there was an investigation going. Yet, when I asked specifically about what investigation, they said, well, no, there's not actually an investigation going. It's due to this termination, which I thought was very puzzling and very disturbing because I think we've all seen the video of the gentleman that was urinating in the water supply here in Donaldsonville. And in the articles about that, it said that there was a state and federal investigation, yet Ruth Phillips shared those videos with David Mitchell and others in the media. So I don't understand why one of our employees for the parish needs a video for his defense, and he's denied it because there's a quote-unquote investigation when there really wasn't a investigation, yet the president's administrative assistant is going to release videos when we know that there's a federal and state investigation going on. It seems like our employees are not being treated very well by the administration. So I don't see what use the video is. So I'm going to go on with my questions. Let's see. Other jumping around a little bit, chain of command. Now, we learned during the Marvin Bro pump station that there was an issue with chain of command. That was one of the reasons for the problem at Marvin Bro. You were also criticized in this report for not reporting this to Bill Dawson. Is Bill Dawson, you aware of what his role is in DPW?
I never knew he had a role in DPW. All I knew he was doing the investigation for the pumping station. I knew he was a past councilman, and I knew he with dealing with some of the utility stuff on this side of the river and helping them try and rejuvenate Donaldsonville with getting money. I seen that on a meeting one night, you know, to buy the Lemons place and the theater by the Lemons place and all that.
So I know you've already established that you didn't feel that this was an emergency because you had stopped the flow of oil, you prevented future spills, and you had contained the oil. But if you had seen, do you know Brandon O'Day? He's the IT director. He's a director here in the parish. Would you have told him about the oil spill?
No.
What about any other, if you saw?
If I'd have saw Clint, I'd have probably told him.
Okay.
Or John, you know, 'cause that's
They're high
in the
up.
chain of line.
But as far as Bill Dawson being in your chain of command, being that the administration cited that you didn't report to him as being one of the issues here, you weren't aware that he was in your chain of command?
No.
And have you ever seen an emergency response plan?
Never have.
What about a spill control prevention plan?
No.
Do you know if we have one?
I've been told we don't by people. I mean, there's a lot of people came to me and told me stuff since all this happened.
But you've never seen
I've
one?
never seen it. I'm under the understanding they're trying to write one right now.
What these absorbent pads that were thrown in the water, we have pictures of those in our packet, correct? Y'all have seen those? See if everybody's seen them. Those are, can you describe those for me?
They are the absorbent pads. They probably 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch thick at the most. They're 15 by 17 inch square or something. They're designed to pick up petroleum-based products.
Do they pick up water?
No.
Okay, do they pick up anything else that you're aware of?
No. Now, there are some gray ones that will pick up coolant, like out of the engine
But
and all.
The images that we have on our computers and our
They're
iPads are the
strictly
white ones.
petroleum-based all pads.
What happens when they pick up the petroleum? What happens to them?
They turn the color or whatever it is. If it's diesel fuel, it'll turn. If it's off-road, it'll turn red.
Okay. And did you see the color of the oil in these pictures?
No.
I mean, what color?
Oh, that's black. That's black.
And
So
we've all seen the pictures of the pads. And have you looked at those pictures?
I've seen them.
Okay. Do you see any of those turning black or brown or any color indicating that they had picked up oil?
No.
So earlier you had testified that this was, I call it swamp oil, that like naturally occurring vegetation oil that you see a sheen over the water.
First time I seen it was I was doing a mechanic, and it was at Sorrento. One of them was they were there pumping the person that normally went out there pump, and I looked and I seen it. But man, we got a leak somewhere? He said no. He said that's all vegetation stuff.
So when you,
On the water.
after this incident, you said you looked over the what is it, the rails?
The
grates?
screen where the
that's
water
right.
comes and it catches the debris and all that.
You looked over the screen, and did you see petroleum oil?
I didn't see no petroleum.
In
I
fact-
seen some of that. They actually had like 3 rows of it that were kind of close together, and it almost looked like there was a little round thing in the water where they were, and that's because of that. When they that pump, it sucked all that up against the debris that was there, and it piled there.
So the fact that the absorbent pads never change colors would be another indication that that was just vegetative oil.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As far as, well, let's see, that's a question for other people. You know, Councilman Ogeron indicated that you were somewhat under duress, being harassed. I don't know what the proper term would be right now, based on your testimony regarding Marvin Bro. In your packet, you had another situation back in July of 22, June or July of 22. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's my understanding that you were disciplined for that.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what happened in that situation.
Well, if you don't mind, I take a little while, but I could tell you exactly what was going on. They were actually there to do an alignment on number 7 engine, gearbox and everything. When it was bought, the alignment was never right. Lineman crew came in one time, tried to align it, and it was boat bound. So when they checked the alignment that last year, or the year before, they found that it was all boat bound. So I asked the fella Dwayne with, I can't think of the name of the company. He was working on the Delcom. Tell me what the fix is for them. And it took quite a few months to get a whole thing together. Actually, I think Clint remembers we had a meeting over there at the glass house about it. And actually they had a hurricane, trying to find out why it took so long to get all this together. And he wanted a jury to overlook Mike's work. So we were doing all that. And the Friday we walked, they were going to finish up. I said, yeah, I'm going to come out there. I say, I can sign your paperwork when I get there. So when I got there, Dwayne and them were finished with their alignment. They had the instrument off, laser alignments all on the computer. So I went up there. I said, where's Melvin? I said, I don't know. We ain't seen him. So I looked at it.
Who's Melvin again?
Melvin Abe, he was the supervisor for Mike Delight with Delcom.
Okay, he's not a parish employee.
No.
He's a contractor.
And so I looked at it all. I took a picture of it, sent it to Billy, because Billy wasn't there yet. Billy called me back, and he said, look, he said, I'm on the way. He said, I'm on the airline. He said, I'm running a little late. I said, all right, well, I just wanted to make sure you see this. So I walked upstairs, and I don't know if you ever been to Marvin, bro, in Safe House or whatever you call it up there. And Marvin sitting back watching TV. I looked at Marvin. I said, Marvin, where do they stand on this alliance? Oh, they're going to be a long time. They ain't nowhere close. I said, it's funny. I just verified it. They got the instruments all off. I just verified it. I said, you might want to go do your job instead of sit up here and watch TV. So he did come out with her. Dwayne and them were just about finished. They bolted everything up, put the all in it. And Dwayne and them went to get lunch. Left out to go get lunch, cranked the engine, warm it up, so when they come back, we could test run it. Billy was talking. Ronnie J come over there. Well, actually, me and Billy had went upstairs. We went and looked at some of the SCADA stuff for Sorrento on the computer. And I said, you need to come talk to us. They said Mike Delight had called them and complained that I was being aggressive with his supervisor. They needed to do something.
Let me ask you a question. Did you also have to review or were you responsible for signing this contractor's timesheets?
Yes, sir.
And would you sometimes, did you have an issue that they were trying to get you to sign timesheets that were not reflective of the amount of work they were doing?
The week before, I actually talked to Mike. Because I like to sign paperwork every day. Or whoever. I don't like this at the end of the week we sign. Because I don't remember exactly what time this one left, all that. It's a T&M job. Time and material. Only support. I was always told, even when I was a mechanic, we could only sign it for what they're there. Parish didn't pay no travel time or none of that. And I told Mike, I said, we had a sign-in sheet that I started because that Mike gonna start because they had some I was unsure about one time. I said, from now on, they gonna sign in and out, and I'm not gonna sign it if it don't match that sheet. And I think when y'all added money to it, Mike actually talked about that, how his people signed in and out, and they only bill for the amount of time they actually worked there. So I told Mike, I said, I can't sign for Melvin when he's leaving. He's wanting a 10-hour day, and he some days he's leaving 7 hours, or 8 hours.
So you were saving taxpayer money there. Did you receive a commendation or a praise for this?
No, I'm not after that.
Well, I know, but what happened after that, though?
Well,
I think you received the opposite.
Yeah, I actually was told by Jay not to go to Marvin Bro while they were there. I listened to that. They know number 6 ending, and I
Does
wasn't.
Jade work for us or Delcon? Is it the same one?
No,
Yeah.
no. I was told to leave the station that day. I almost quit. It really disgusted me, you know, and they recommended I take a week off to think about it. So after about that month, they went through all this stuff. Well, we actually, Megan, Jade, and Ryan, we had a meeting at DPW in the little conference room. And pretty much told me, you know, showed some evidence to me and stuff. They got Mike to write some stuff. They got Tyrone to write some stuff that they left. And said, this stuff matched almost directly to each other. Sounds like they've been talking to each other to come up with stuff on me. I mean, Mike Delight asked for my job and what I was shown. Jade said in there for me not to go to Martin Road when they there. So I did. I said, well, that's good. When they do number, you're going to get with Billy and let Billy know when he got to go. I mean, Mike already don't want Billy looking over their work. He said, no, you can do that. So he said, so I misunderstood what he said. You know, keep him in contact. I did send an email to Mike to keep me in the loop, you know. And I included Jade on the email. Wasn't trying to hide nothing. Another time, some of the time they show up there on a holiday. Holiday, we don't have nobody at the pumping station. We're not pumping water. And I sent, make sure they all knew nobody was going to be working for the 4th of July. Another time, Mike Delight sent me a text message about something. You know, but even everything I sent to Mike, I included Jay.
And you were disciplined for that?
Insubordination.
Thank you. Let me ask you another question about the HR process that you recently went through in front of the HR board. Were you allowed in the room while they were making the case against you?
They do go meet in there before you go in, yeah.
Who goes to meet in there?
Ryan and Jay.
With the HR board?
With the HR board. At both times, Ms. Megan stayed outside with me, and we talked until they were ready.
And well, that's really, I think, all the questions I have for you. I still don't like this process. I don't think the current process that we have is fair. We have had a process for the past 2.5, 3 years that has worked, that has been consistent. This new process, originally, the one that the chairman presented to us, was that the administration would present with you out of the room, that the HR board would present with you out of the room. You would then come in and present your case, and they would stay in there. And then after your case was done, you would leave, and HR would then fact check, and that was a quote, fact check what you had to say, which I just find to be the least friendly procedure you could have for an employee, somebody in our parish, somebody that's supposed to work for us. I would never work for an employer that did that to me, and I don't know anybody here that would. So for that to be the procedure that we tried to put you under, I think is just a miscarriage of justice, not to mention the fact that you have been denied evidence that you wanted to use in this.
And I wanted you to get that so I could see if what I was told was factual.
Frankly, it doesn't necessarily matter why you wanted it. The fact of the matter is that you were denied it until yesterday at 3 o'clock, as was I. It tells me a lot of things, that all of a sudden somebody got the word that this process is totally a bunch of baloney and said we better cover ourselves and send out this video. Now the question is, I have to whomever sent it out, is what changed between then, when it was impermissible for me or I don't want to call you the defendant, the employee, that we couldn't get it, but what has changed since then? Nothing. Nothing has changed. This is not the way an administration should treat an employee. That's all the questions I have for right now.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take the time to. Ms. Lawler has been on this council for 7 years and almost 4 months and has operated under 4 different procedures from every chairman he served under. So I've never heard you complain about it. I sent it out, you received it a week ago. As soon as I got constructive criticism back, I made the changes.
I don't understand why there were changes made in the first place.
There were changes made last year by Councilman Cagnolati from the way Ms. Casso did it. I don't remember hearing you say a word about it. Ms. Casso
What
did it
changes were
differently.
made?
Huh?
Which changes were made?
Whenever Mr. Cagnolati did it, he did not let supervision or administration in while the employee was in there.
No, it's not true. No, they weren't allowed in there while we did deliberations. Deliberations is what it was, which that was even during Ms. Cazzo's, I won't call it reign.
Please don't.
It was, the original process that I had a problem with was that while we would try to deliberate whether or not employees should be brought back, the employee was removed, yet the administration, including the parish president, was allowed to stay in the room and try to convince us of what we should be doing, which is an abomination of justice. There is no way that should happen. That's the change that was made. Ever since that change was made, we have done things consistently. We have done things the way we had done things were very much like an appellate court, was the employee, because he is the one making the appeal, would go first. He would state his case for 10 minutes, and we'd allow more time, and he could use whatever evidence he wanted. We made sure he had evidence. Then the administration would come, and they would have their time, their 10 minutes, and they would have whatever evidence they wanted. And then he'd have a 5-minute rebuttal. Then we could ask questions. We didn't infringe on their time with our questions, and then we would deliberate. This system, even though it has been somewhat changed, now we're going to tell an employee that they cannot introduce any evidence that wasn't introduced before, but the same is not said of the administration, which is not treating an employee fairly.
All right, so I'm not sure if you noticed, but whenever Mr. Shakespeare offered pictures of text and
I
whatnot.
understand that, but the information that was
we-
provided them was
we
that he
just looked
couldn't.
at it. No.
I read the written word that came out.
It's always this big outrageous thing with you. All you had to do was mention your changes. Ms. Casso reached out with the same concerns. What did I do? Within 24 hours, I made the changes. But not you. It's always got to be a big grand
No,
thing.
you still have a procedure here where you're telling the employee that they can only produce what was produced earlier, yet not the administration. That rings totally unfair.
All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Shakespeare?
I have one.
Yep, Mr. Mason.
Mr. Shakespeare, why were you terminated? What was the official reason?
For leaving the emergency off bill,
Did you leave the site?
I sure did.
Okay.
Off of my training when we had went to the one in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
It's not in the water, it's not,
I just
You
wanted
can
to make sure, I didn't specifically see anywhere where it said your official termination, like why exactly you left. So I just
yeah,
wanted to
and,
clarify.
and I think there was some insubordination, because when I was asked in a text, after I felt like I was being blamed for it by one text, why I left. The same one asking me that, the same one sent me the meeting for 9:30, and I had to have an accept request that let them know that I did get it. And I've called both of them, and they didn't answer the phone. And I think if I'd have an employee I was sending somewhere and had to be somewhere, and he's calling me, I think something's wrong. I need to answer the phone or get back with him. So I feel like if I wouldn't have went, I'd have still got in trouble.
Well, and just so I understand, you did not tell Mr. Dawson right there, because he's not your direct supervisor, I understand that.
You're correct.
Okay.
You're 100% correct.
And whenever you called, you didn't leave a voicemail on
Didn't leave a voicemail for none
or
of 'em.
James?
Nope,
Three?
I didn't.
And no texts? All you did was try to send an email whenever you got to
Yeah.
the thing? Okay. Maybe you said it, and if you did, I'd sincerely apologize, but why didn't you leave a voicemail on anybody's?
I was in business for myself, and I didn't leave voicemail.
Okay.
I tell people, if you call me, because I don't leave them, and I don't have your number in my phone, If you don't leave me a voice message, I ain't calling you back.
Okay.
But if I see your number and I know you, I'm gonna return your phone call.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yep, Mr. Long.
You mentioned that you had to be at a meeting and you were worried about that. Why were you concerned?
Because I was being left out of everything. I was being, kind of felt like I was being blamed. I was also, the week that happened, that whole week I was at work, the next week I ended up with the flu. And I spent 6, 7 days in the bed and on the sofa, and that's it.
Did you have a concern you could be fired if you weren't at the
Yeah,
meeting?
yeah. Which I was told when I came back to work by a parish employee that the secretary for the drainage told him that Jay was working on getting me fired.
And so it's my understanding that you, being under duress, you have to be somewhere on a certain time. You're concerned that you're going to get fired if you don't show up there.
Yeah.
I understand that. And we recently heard that unless employees do what they're told to do, they're going to get fired.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. Has an emergency ever been defined to you? What constitutes an emergency?
No.
So some people may call it an emergency, but you spill a little oil in a room, is that an emergency to you?
No. It happens all the time in the shop. I don't even know if they bust a hose on a piece of equipment in the field, if they worry about it at all when they change it. I don't know.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
Yep, Ms. Casso.
I want to go back to after this incident, the oil had been spilt. Someone checked is Mr. Ron Landry available to substantiate your?
No. I didn't even know how to get that to happen.
Who does Mr. Landry work for? So he's a parish employee. He's not a. That was my concern.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
on.
He was on? All right.
I'm just
sorry.
back because I got this thing
All
in my
right.
lap. So but he told you that he checked it and that it was not, there certainly wasn't 5 gallons gone.
No,
and he didn't think there were 2 gallons gone because it was full.
Said they were completely full. I said, well, that happened, then when the master mechanic put the quarter oil in it, he overfilled it.
Mhm. So how big is, my understanding is that this oil came from the dipstick.
Yes, ma'am. One of the pictures actually, you can see it if you know what you're looking. It's right over the battery, and you can see how they all ran down the battery.
Mhm.
I've seen that before when I was doing mechanic work. Somebody new goes there with one and go check the oil. You have to actually take, and I've told this to the mechanic, you have to actually take them dipsticks on them engines and make sure you push them in. You feel them actually click in. If you just push it down, it's not going to be all the way down and seal where the oil don't come out when it runs.
So there was no other leak from this. So
No matter.
we're surmising here that 5 gallons, somewhere between 2 and 5 gallons of oil leaked out of a tiny little dipstick hole on top. It's not, it's located on top or under?
No, it's at the bottom. It's right over the oil pan at the bottom of the block.
I'm not a mechanic
Well,
by any
I know that.
stretch, so I'm trying to understand what happened here. And Mr. Landry's not available to tell us.
No,
Will you?
I feel like if I would have tried to get him, go through HR, he'd have been hoaxed to change his story anyway. I mean, we can get him. I mean, we could postpone this and get him, and there's some other people that wanted to testify, but I don't know how to do that and them not be used as people that, not to say scapegoat, but put pressure on and,
Yeah, I understand.
and hold things against them.
I understand. I really do. At what point did you request to see the tapes from the,
March 18th.
and those were delivered to you when?
Yesterday, which the 5th, April the 5th, at 3:16, I think is when the email was sent out, PM.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Jeez, I got one more,
Mr. Mason.
sorry. Why can't we see the video?
I mean, we can if y'all want. They have it.
I mean, yeah. If it helps, yeah.
Do y'all still need me up here, or?
No, I'm good. I just want to see the video.
How long is the video?
Which video is Jerry is playing?
So is this showing of the video, is this going to be the administration's rebuttal? Is that what this is?
No? Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not part of our procedure. That's not the procedure we were sold on. We don't have that as an option. So just like we don't follow procedures when it comes to taking care of our employees and firing them, we're also going to avoid following procedures when it comes to their appeals. That's okay. We just keep everything in the closet. That's what we do, Michael.
If Mr. Shakespeare wanted to, did you know? If you'd like to, yeah,
I think in fairness, it's his time, so.
Yeah, I mean, this video looks like it's 45 minutes long. I mean, are we going to see anything in the video that is not in the? Mr. Arthur, can you come up here, please? Mr. Arthur, can you?
I think that the one in blue is Mr. Ray Scully, supervisor for Delcom. The one in the, I think that's a pink shirt, must be his helper, mechanic, I don't know. And they'd have to put all samples out the engines, so they could send out all off to be sampled and see if needs changing, if there's engine wear. And I mean, and that is the engine right there that they buy.
Okay.
That leak. That's number one engine, and they go 1, 2, and 3 on.
Is this a video of the day of the incident?
No,
this is
the
the
day
work
before,
that they
right?
did the day before. Right, and it was stated that that Delcom left the dip tube loose, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is the initial cause of the spill.
And if I'd have been there with them, and that's the type of stuff gets me in trouble, me knowing this, I would have told them, and I'd have went back and checked behind them. And people get offended when you go double check, because I know what'll happen when it cranks up, if it's not in there right.
Okay. All right, I think we're good with the video. Mr. Weisbach? We can't,
Well, there's plenty of
We can't hear you,
videos that
Mr. Roberto.
probably take all night to watch if you watch them all.
yeah, that was just a
I was just saying what's in the video isn't being disputed between the parties, so do we really need to watch this?
No.
What are we doing?
I don't think so.
This would be during the night when BT Skater actually cranked it, when the water level got the height that it cranks it and pump water out. Actually, it looks like you can see it all coming out down it right by the battery, that black spot. There's the battery, the dipstick's right over it, and it looks like you can see it all running down the side of the battery right there.
How would the oil have gotten to the water from there?
Well, they had to run outside the building over there. And in that picture with the tin, you can see where that fuel line goes down and goes into the slab. There's no water all got to the tin over there, where it would have leaked out and went under the roadway and got in the under the pump.
Mr. Arthur, what's the distance between the oil spill that you saw and where they claim it got to the water? 20, 30 feet, more than that?
Right here, and the other wall would be about the front of the gas.
Okay, so about 15 feet, and then,
On this side of it, with the yellow stain cover, is the drive line, and the round piece, that's the actual gearboxes that turn the pump.
gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta come up to the mic, Jay. Look, so we are getting a little off course here. So, look, do we have any more
We're gonna tell
questions?
the truth, we're gonna tell the whole truth. We also, as Ms. Arthur should know, that on those gearboxes, there's a 1/2 inch diameter between that plate and that concrete that allows that oil to seep through. You can physically see the water.
On the suction?
I've showed this to Ms. Casso just a few weeks ago. So in your photos where the oil comes out in your video, you can show where the oil runs off the top of the slab to the rear of the motor and also the front of the motor. So there's very directly 3 to 4 possibilities of that oil getting in that water. So just wanted to point that out.
Well, we don't have any
Yeah, Miss-
evidence that shows that it made it to the water, correct?
Have you viewed your photos in your packet? Those photos show you all the evidence you need.
Well, what I saw were clean pads. I saw clean white pads. I didn't see anything that looked like it was absorbing any sort of oil or any sort of petroleum product.
In the quality of that photo.
Okay.
In the
Mr. Wagersback. Yeah.
Hey, Jade or Arthur, who's responsible for checking the pumps that they're ready to run after Delcon comes out and works on them?
The mechanic.
Who
the
is?
mechanic or the person in charge.
And who was the mechanic that was supposed to check that?
Jared.
Jared Moore?
Yes.
Okay.
And look, and for the record, I will state, I've been a mechanic all my life, certified master ASE technician. Those engines hold 12 to 15 gallons of oil. Gallons, not 5. 12 to 15. Those are industrial Cummins engines. If anybody has a Cummins pickup truck, which I have 2, they hold 12 gallons. So no, you're wrong. And in charge of maintenance for 7 years, you should have known that.
Can we go get the maintenance?
All right. Look, hey,
We're not gonna do that.
Please do.
no, we're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
We're not doing that. Okay,
But,
so,
and it was found that our mechanic had overfilled the engine. He did. Because the engine oil was drained from the 2 other engines the day after. So the oil on there to get a full engine oil line was residual oil from being overfilled. This was a misstep by our 2 technicians. So there you go,
I got quartz.
sir.
You sure not quartz? I mean, a diesel engine.
Good.
He mentioned truck, but I got a
Good.
follow-up question. It's
Google
still
it.
my turn.
All right,
Please do.
one person at a time. Mr. Waxback, you have the floor.
I was just gonna ask, what, per the procedures that we say Arthur broke, what is the reportable quantity of oil in the water? And what are the reporting procedure to the state police, to federal? What are the rules on that?
I'd really like to refer to our safety guy, and he's not here. But I did bring a copy of our chemical response training that we received for 2 solid years in the 3rd. And in that book here, it goes to a sheen. We was taught by our training, whether it's EPA, whatever, through the training that the parish verifies that we go to, that a sheen on the water is reportable immediately. It is verified underneath EPA in this chemical spill book. I have a copy here if y'all like to look at it.
All right. Any more questions from the council? No? Does administration need your second round of 5 minutes? Okay.
Good evening, guys. Jeff Diaz, parish attorney for a long time. Enjoy coming here. Rarely do get a chance to come here. And actually, I only here lately have come on employment cases, and they're the worst cases for me to handle. It's like handling, I also represent the school board, handling expulsion cases involving kids, which is pretty much the same thing. Firing people is hard to do. It's a difficult decision to make, but it has to be, somebody's got to do it when it needs to be done. This is an appeal. Everybody was given a chance. I was not at the HR review, so I can't speak to what happened there. And Mr. Lawler raises some very good points about due process. And there's a process that should be in place in these cases. And it's kind of getting there. But administration puts on its evidence, employee puts on his evidence. You give him notice of the charges. HR board, the administration makes a decision to terminate. An appeal is taken to the HR board. HR board hears the case, administration evidence, employee evidence. And I really only came here because I thought Mr. Shakespeare was going to have an attorney, so I'm not here to, this is not, at the last time I did this, it was like, well, that's not fair. You're an attorney and you're out. You got to be careful what you do when you're an attorney and you're taking on a guy that's not. He's done a masterful job, but we are all over the place. And we need to bring it back to what this really is. You were given a packet, and I was given this packet today. And I asked to look at this, and I mean, somebody said, well, what were you fired for? Well, he knows good and well what he was fired for, because on page 1 of section F, there are at least 6 different things. You fail to recognize the emergency situation the oil spill created. We all saw it as an oil spill. Whether it's 2 gallons or 5 gallons, there was an oil spill. We saw sheen on the water. I have no idea what that means. But I know this, there was an oil spill on the concrete, and there was a sheen on the water. Logically, they have to be connected, and it was just explained to us that it was about 3 feet away, down this pipe hole. But the fact of the matter is, nobody denies there was oil on the concrete. Nobody denies that he's the manager of the pump station. But he was told, you failed to recognize the emergency situation the oil spill created. Number 2, and this is to him, you failed to make positive communications with your higher level supervisors. Number 3, and this is in your packets, guys. This is what I thought you ought to have been asking about. You failed to report the emergency to the safety officer for over 2 hours. He is the manager. He walks in, he's the only one there. He sees an oil spill. He puts a little bit of stuff on there around it, and he leaves, and after that, it manages to get into the water. So, should he have left? Well, let's go on about that. You left, number 4. You left the pumping station unattended with oil continuing to spill, to expand. Number 5, You fail to perform your duties appropriately. Number 6, and this is the big one, guys. This is the manager of the pump station. He walks in, he sees an oil spill, he leaves, and he never comes back. He didn't come back the rest of the day. We sent a crew of 6 people out there in boats with little pads, picking this stuff up. Yeah, it might have been a small amount, but a small amount of oil in the water is pollution, guys. And he is the manager. He is over the pump station. He left. He never came back. And I really want you to look at this. He was given a chance to reply, and he did. In section F, I told him today, I said, guys, when you put a packet together, you got to put page numbers. There's no page numbers in here, so I got to tell you where to go. F is about page number 5. It's an email from Arthur Scheckstein to Ron Savoy, and he explains what he did, or rather, what he didn't do. He says, I went to the station and found there was oil on the concrete at number 1 pump, and I took a few pictures and called to tell Jade. He took pictures. He knew this was serious. You don't just take pictures if it ain't serious. He took pictures. He had them on his phone. And how many times? Read the statement. And I'm not knocking this poor gentleman. But what I'm saying is we got to face facts. And then you got to make a hard decision after we face facts. Something happened that day. He's the manager over it. Administration decides to terminate. He goes to the HR review board. They uphold the termination. And now, guys, you get elected, you get the big bucks to make the decision. But let's look at the rest of what he said. I took pictures. I called Jade. Didn't get Jade. He went to this meeting. He left. He had to go to this meeting. In other words, this meeting was more important than this oil spill that he took pictures of. That hadn't got to the water yet, but it got it in the water after he left. But he went to this meeting. And what did he do when he got to this meeting? I sat down, and I tried to put some of the pictures in an email to send out an email on the oil at Sorrento, and couldn't get the picture to an email on my email that I set up on my phone. So, but what that tells you is that he knew, he took pictures of it, he leaves the scene, he goes to a meeting, and he realizes, I got to do some of these pictures. And I tried to put some of the pictures in an email to send out an email of the oil at Sorrento, and I couldn't get the picture to an email on my email that's set up on my phone. So they never went anywhere. He's still not made contact with anybody. The pictures have never gone anywhere. And then he tries again. After the meeting, I tried to send some pictures to my email again to send an email. Couldn't send pictures from my phone to an email. He is telling you how important he thinks this is. He knows. I saw a spill. I need to report it. I took pictures. I need to send them out, but I can't send them out. Call somebody. Text somebody. Talk to somebody. You just talked to Bill. I don't know what the guy y'all said he didn't have a chain of command, but he's somebody. Tell somebody there's an oil spill in Sorrento. We got to deal with it. I have pictures on my phone. I can't get anybody, but I'm sitting here with you while the pump station that I manage has a spill, and I don't even know how big that spill is right now.
Hey, Mr. Diaz, that's 5 minutes if you want to wrap it up.
One more question. Ron Savoy, Texas. This is the bottom of his statement. I got it in 3 colors in mine because I was shocked when I read it. At 11:48, Ron texts, why did you leave the site? Why did you leave the site? That should be a burning question for you, Mr. Lawler. It should be a burning question. Why did you leave the site? You're the man in charge. Answer. He wrote this. Jeff Diaz didn't write this. Why did you leave the site? I didn't respond. You talk about insubordination. Ron Savoy asked you after you saw this stuff, took these pictures, tried to send these pictures, why did you leave the site? And he said, in his own words, I did not respond. That's insubordination. That's why the administration recommended termination. Now, you get to decide whether to uphold that. This is just this is an appeal. So that's the case by the administration. I hope I brought some clarity to it. And if you have any questions of me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Tim, I'm gonna bring Mr. Arthur up and let him have his rebuttal unless y'all would like to ask. Okay, well, we'll have council ask questions of administration now then.
In the president's letter, stated, it said Mr. LeBlanc's, talking about from Mr. James LeBlanc, it's on the first page of this. Mr. LeBlanc stated he did not receive a call from you that morning. Per enclosure number 4, Mr. LeBlanc's first communication from you was via text at 11:19, which was over 2 hours after the state of the emergency.
Chapter and verse.
Very first page, end of the first paragraph, number 1. And you stated that as a reason for he's been fired, yet we've already learned that he called Mr. LeBlanc at 9 a.m. or 9:18.
No, he didn't talk to Mr. LeBlanc.
He called him.
Attempted to call.
Where was Mr. LeBlanc that time? Well, in here it says your first communication that he did not receive a call that morning. Where's Mr. LeBlanc? Because he did receive a call that morning. He received a call at 9:18. Why is he giving false information on this?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Ms.
I
Gates.
haven't spoken to James.
I
In fact, I was upset.
But this is incorrect.
I was upset he wasn't here because I know Mr. LeBlanc, and I've seen him defend his character, and his character's impeccable, and I would love to have him here. But he's
I don't know why
home
this is
sick and
incorrect.
throwing up. But she can answer for Mr. LeBlanc.
That's actually the first time I've heard that he has a picture of that, because I asked Mr. LeBlanc several times, did you get a phone call from Mr. Arthur? He said, the very first communication I received from Arthur is in my safety report that is in your packet at approximately 11:12 via text message. He says, you can review my phone records. I did not get a call from him. Those are his words.
So the safety report's incorrect then? We have proof that the phone call was made.
May I see it and present it to Mr. LeBlanc when he gets a chance? He's not here, but that is what he said.
Also, it says equally egregious is that, and you cited this in the arguments, equally egregious is that you left construction of a pumping station unattended with oil continuing to spill. That's incorrect. We've already learned that oil was not continuing to spill. He shut off the engine,
That's why
preventing
you
it from
probably
spilling.
caught me say that. I read that too. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, the spill, whoever wrote that.
Microphone, Mr. Diaz. Microphone. I'm reminding everyone
sorry.
again, please
Yeah,
speak
whoever
into
wrote
the
that, it's
mics.
obvious what they meant. It wasn't that it continued to continue to spill, the spill expanded.
Well, that's
And
not
that-
what was written, though.
Fair
That's
enough.
not what was written. And it makes a big difference.
Counsel, fair
Because when there's an emergency, if somebody's saying it's an emergency, man, if I have fixed the situation, if I've prevented more water or more oil from coming out, and I've contained it using the dry stuff, it's not an emergency.
Counsel.
I've solved the problem.
didn't
He
get-
did not consider emergency, and you know what? I haven't seen it. Where is emergency defined by this parish?
Well, I just read you 6 reasons.
Where is it defined by this parish? What defines what an emergency is? Is it, I mean, we know that oil gets spilled here and
I'm
there.
not a scientist or a biologist, I'm an attorney, but I'll say this. Oil in the water is probably considered an emergency of some type somewhere, especially in this green economy.
Would vegetative oil that's naturally occurring be considered an emergency?
This was not vegetative oil.
We don't know that.
We saw it we saw a video, and you have a number of pictures, and you see it coming out of the pump, and it's black. Actually,
No.
it looks like it was dripping
It's
out
coming out of the pump on the cement. We
on
don't
the cement,
have any, we don't
and
have
then
any
it went
proof.
down into the water.
We don't have any proof that what was in the water was this oil.
And I don't think that's not the charges that are being brought against him.
But he is being charged that he didn't report an emergency, and he's telling us right now that he didn't consider it an emergency. This guy's been doing this for years. We got a guy telling us that an engine
Being
takes 12
charged,
gallons of
he's-
oil. I mean, give me a break.
Counsel.
My
he's
point
being-
is, it's not an emergency.
Well,
This gentleman knows what he's doing. He realized, hey, there's oil spilled on the cement. Here it is. I'm going to take kitty litter, as I call it, solve the problem. I fixed the problem. And he was under duress.
well, it
We
really
know
didn't
why
so-
he left.
It really didn't solve the problem because it continued to expand and got past the kitty litter
No,
into
no,
the water.
we don't know that it did.
Well, somehow or another, well, let's
And we don't know if that-
circumstantial evidence says if there's oil in the concrete and no oil in the water, and then 3 hours later, it's all in the water. It came from the oil and concrete.
But the testimony was already that there was already a sheen in the water, and the pads that pick up the oil came up clean. We have no image of those pads being brown. So that tells me that it wasn't oil in the water. It wasn't oil from this.
The focus is
So it wasn't
more
an
than
emergency.
just oil in the water.
I understand that. It
The
was
focus
not
on
an
he
emergency.
saw it, he realized it was a problem.
And he
took
solved it.
pictures of it. He tried to call people. He tried to email pictures. He left his station, and he never came back. At the end of the day, after everything was cleaned up, he still had not come back. Why did you leave? I didn't even respond.
Mr. Scheck-Snyder has already stated that he's taken pictures of multiple things through the years.
Well, I
He-
take pictures
that's what
all
he
the
does.
time. I mean,
So
all
do
of
I.
us take pictures
Good
of
and
multiple
bad.
things.
I take a picture when I solve something. I fixed my dryer recently. I was so happy I took the damn thing apart. My wife did, they got to put it back together. She said, go buy a new one. I got it put back together. I took a picture of it.
I may need those pictures in
Just
case my
like this.
dryer ever goes out.
Just
But
like
we're
well, it's
about
a- it's a
very
dryer back
serious-
together.
This is very serious. Look, this man's job has been,
Has been threatened for months,
control
and they
his fate.
finally got him. And they finally got him.
Well, if he had reacted to that oil spill as a reasonable manager would have acted, they wouldn't have got him, if that's really the words we're going to use.
Well, you have to remember that within days of that, we had the own parish president saying, when asked, well, how do our employees know what to do? His response is, well, they do what I say or they'll be fired. And you know what? He was told to go to see Bill Dawson. Mr. Scheck-Snyder knew that. He knew that if he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. So he figured, I solved this problem. I cleaned up the spill. I prevented it from spreading. I shut off the engine so nobody else could do it. And you know what? That means there's not going to be any more of a spill. Now I got to save my
Well, he really
job
didn't
and get
clean
my
up the
butt to that
spill.
glass house so I can be interrogated
He
again.
didn't clean up the spill. The crew went out and cleaned up the
Well,
spill, even on the concrete.
he cleaned up some of it. That
He
stuff,
did- Throwing kitty litter is
it
not
contains
cleaning
it.
up.
It contains it.
It absorbs it. And in this case, it didn't even contain it.
Well, we don't know if it did or didn't do it.
Well, I wasn't there.
We're trying to fight for a
Two
man's
lawyers will
livelihood.
fight. Two lawyers will fight with each other.
And he's a good one. I
It's
like
very
him.
interesting.
He's a good man.
I have one more question I have to
Part of
ask,
it's
Ms. Kessler.
because it's a major factor for me. And I've asked Mr. Lambert, if you go out there with these absorbent towels, whatever you call them, they call them diapers out there, I think, and we have pictures of that, and those diapers are white. There's no poop in them. There's
Ms.
nothing
Castle,
that
you make
changes
a
their color.
great point, but that's something that administration does have
So,
to explain.
I need to understand, if that was oil in the water, should those diapers have been the color of oil or not? And Mr. Lambert and I are sitting here talking, he said they ought to be brown. He's got more knowledge of those things than I do.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Lambert then.
So, all I can tell you is every picture of them that is in here, they're white as clean diaper.
Ms. Castle, I saw the same pictures.
So
I
that's
don't
a-
deny
I just
that's
want you to
exactly what
understand
they
that's
show.
a challenge
Yes.
for me, and
I-
I'm sure it is for some of these other folks.
I don't disagree.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we overturn the decision of the board.
All right, Mr. Scheck-Snyder, would you like to speak before we vote? You do have another 5 minutes if you would like it.
I said all I had to say. Just said there was no oil in the water. It was all vegetation. And they threw the stuff in the dumpster on the back of the yard. And I was also told they couldn't pick the stuff up, so they cranked up the engine and pumped it out. And Ray Scully, the one that was in blue, I was told he had a bottle of Dawn dishwashing detergent, spraying it in the water while they were pumping with the pump. That's why I wanted to take, to be able to see what these people were telling me. That I didn't want to ask to come here because they would be used as harassed and stuff out there. But if I could've got the tape, I could've seen if Ray was doing that. And if I wouldn't have seen him doing it, I wouldn't be able to state that. I'd have seen that they cranked the pumps up because they couldn't pick it up and pushed it out the conway, like I was told. And
All right, well, thank you,
Can
Mr. Arthur.
Can I
So,
ask one more question?
yeah, Mr. White's back?
Was anybody else at that station before you that morning?
no,
No? Okay.
no. I went there I actually waited at the gate by the cattle guard for, the truck driver from Robath.
Right. And you are the head of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I'm over them, but
But you still can't check behind Delcon's work at that
I
station?
can't stay, and I couldn't direct my mechanic to do nothing either.
And you can't, even though you're over all the pumps, you can't regulate or say how many people should be working those pumps.
No.
So to say that you're in charge of the pumps is really a
No.
misnomer.
Most of the time, they tell us how many pumps to put on
Okay.
as it goes by.
I made the motion, I'm good.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Lawler to overturn the HR Review Board and Administration's decision to terminate Mr. Shake Snyder and reward him his job back, and Mr. Ogeron has seconded. We do have objections, so Ms. Secretary, can we please have a roll call? And a yes vote will be giving Mr. Arthur his job back, and a no vote will be to uphold the termination.
Councilman Robert,
No.
Councilman Turner.
No.
Councilman Orgeron,
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
No.
Councilwoman Casso,
Yes.
Councilman Lawler,
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback,
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti,
Yes.
Councilman Mason,
No.
Councilman Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Melanson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
So the termination is upheld? Okay. All right. Okay.
Mr. Scheck-Snyder, this is one of the best cases of whistleblower that I've ever seen. I wish you luck in the future, taking advantage of that, okay?
All right, so moving along, unfortunately, I do have to go to work. I am on week 6 of the most nightmarish turnaround to ever exist. So for the rest of our executive sessions, I will be turning it over to my partner in crime right here, Mr. Coach Thomas. So he will take us through the rest of the agenda. If give us just 1 second, please.
See you later, Chase. Happy Easter.
Okay, let's resume. We have the discussion, B, executive session B, discussion of water plant employee incident. Have a roll call to go to an executive session. Senator?
Councilman Turner. Councilman Orgeron,
No.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso,
Yes.
Councilman Lawler,
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback,
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti,
Yes.
Councilman Mason,
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we cannot go into executive session unless it's a unanimous vote.
I think we just talk about it here.
Coach, you can go on to the next one. For C.
All right, C, executive session, Ascension Parish Government versus Nick and Shelby Ahart. Request for permission to file suit for code enforcement for violation of Ascension Parish, Louisiana Undefined Land Development Code, fence requirement 17-2082-B.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
No.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
We can't go in again. It's not unanimous.
Wouldn't that also mean that they have no authority to file suit then?
Correct.
Executive session D, District Attorney Ricky Bauman, Sheriff Bobby Weber, and Ascension Parish.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
No.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Again, not unanimous.
I have a question,
All right.
sir.
Yes. Great, Mr.
Thank you. Is there an option to discuss these in public? I mean,
Yeah, that's
particularly
what
this one with that is the district attorney, item D.
Yes.
Sheriff Weber.
Yeah,
and-
I distributed to y'all in advance a stipulated judgment. All parties agree, and I just need, it's gonna be filed in the public record. I really, I don't need to discuss anything in executive session, I don't think. It's just a stipulated judgment. I've been in communication with you, Ms. Casso, I think it's your district, as to the nature of this case, and we have an admission, basically, that by the defendant that they're in violation, and so we're ready to proceed in a joint venture. So I would just ask that y'all vote on the stipulated judgment, just so I have authority to resolve the case, and we move forward to cleaning it up.
Stipulated judgment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lawler and second by Ms. Cagnalotti, Ms.
Cazzo.
Terry, Ms. Cazzo.
Either one.
Any discussion? Any objection?
Objection.
Objection, Mr. Ogeron.
Councilman Turner.
Just for clarification, we're objecting to,
Aaron made the motion.
yeah, I made the motion to approve the stipulation so we can move forward with fixing up Pookie Lane.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
Nope.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
And I want to thank all of you. This is a 12-year endeavor to try to get this cleaned up. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get it taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item E, resolution to join lawsuit by the Attorney General on behalf of State of Louisiana, Levy Board, and other parishes against FEMA to address grave concerns regarding a risk rating 2.0 underlying methodologies is failure to properly take the account improvement of the levee board to the flood protection system and its catastrophic effects on Louisiana flood insurance rates and the ability of Louisiana homeowners to purchase flood insurance.
I'll make a motion, we go into executive session,
Second.
since we have to go through that.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron?
No.
Councilman Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso?
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti?
Yes.
Councilman Mason?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Not unanimous.
Again, this is similar to the one we just did. I really don't need, there's
Make
a
a motion
lawsuit
to
that's
approve
being
the
filed.
resolution.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Mike Mason and second by Mr. Lawler to approve the resolution. There's one objection.
No objection.
Okay.
I'm just wanting us to remain transparent.
Good with that.
All right. Next one, F, Demco as First Ascension Parish, 23rd JDC Parish of Ascension, suit number 134-841, Division D. Motion by Mr. Dempsey.
This is
Second.
to go into executive
Go into
session, or motion to
executive session.
approve the, I think we got a procedural issue. Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive session, a second of that.
Second by Ms. Cazzo, go into
Councilman-
executive session.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron?
Nope.
Councilman Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso?
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti?
Yes.
Councilman Mason?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Not unanimous.
We'll have to wait for next time on this one.
Okay.
I think the other is being by Paul, maybe, but this is more of an update. We can actually send an email to the council.
Yes.
Perfect.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mike and second by Mr. Lawler. Any discussion of the motion? This meeting is adjourned.